having spent quite some time in the corporate world since I got into it. I've been working for 20 years or something after being an early school leaver. Did a stint in retail and sales, and I was front of house. I didn't really see a lot of the social stuff going on in the background, but having spent time around the financial services ecosystem in the last 13 years, which is chock full of graduates, those who came after the Blair reforms that turned the universities into a hive for paying customers nationally, internationally, and no one wants to fail their customers, and we want to give customers what they want, and we can not challenge them and all of those things, but also allow them to effectively create their own syllabuses in some respects. You could make an argument that many of these social sciences and the various lenses that have been applied are the consequence of allowing a kind of self-gratifying selection of content. And obviously most people who get into academia will be inclined towards that left bias just because of the numbers of them. But working in the financial services environment, I see the celebration of cultures very openly, and the diminishing, or at least the suppressing of the host culture of Britain. Give two examples. So most recent one is seeing Christmas parties not being called Christmas parties anymore. They're winter parties, which is soul destroying. You don't need to be a Christian to recognize that just because the company might be full of people from all different places, it doesn't actually reside inside of an airport terminal where there is no law of the land there. You know, there's no taxes, there's no duty, whatever. There is a very real place and people around here, and this is what has been celebrated for 1600 years. It seems a little bit self-indulgent and at least, and I suppose at worst, a bit imposing to suggest we can just wipe that away. And I've also seen there be flexibility added to people's holiday allowance so that they can choose not to take Christmas Day, Boxing Day, Easter Sunday, or Easter Monday, Good Friday. They can just take them any other time in the year. Just you choose. It's all about flexibility, as though a corporation can decide that as to what a country decides. And the final point I'll make is Easter. Now, you don't see Easter talked about in the corporate world anymore. It runs alongside Ramadan, and Ramadan is promoted, and often you'll find leaders of very large corporations doing lots of social media, talking about how they're fasting. Too Fast, Too Furious is a hashtag that I saw them breaking iftar at the end of the day, taking pictures of themselves, doing bios, encouraging other non-Muslims to do it, without actually realizing that, you know, culture isn't just made up on the spot, and religious ideas and are theological, and they mean something to the people espousing them. And in the case of Ramadan, it's the acceptance that the Quran is the final word, and that everything goes into that. And for these corporate leaders, it's just a way of showing their bona fides with regards to, look how inclusive we are. There are no ramifications to them, but for many people, there are huge ramifications. And I don't know when this ends, if it ever does, but I think it's having such deleterious effects on cohesion.
Yeah, I think there are a few things to say about that. And as you were telling me those stories, which are very familiar to me, you know, working in the education sector, a few things kind of suggest themselves. That idea that we have to celebrate every other culture than our own, apart from our own, is actually a really patronizing, paternalistic idea, isn't it? You know, oh well, we know we can take all of that. We're very mature, you know. But you must enjoy your culture. We'll look on and like, you know, like loving parents to the to the childish cultures. It always strikes me as really patronizing, because because it's hugely patronizing. You know, it's taking, you know, being the parent, taking yourself out of it and letting these children play. Let the children play. Related to that is the growing sense that we fetishize youth as well. And you were talking about syllabuses or syllabi. I'm not quite sure what the word is. I should actually, after 25 years in the sector. Where you know, it's student led, and young people know best, and it's a lived experience. It's their lived experience. There's something that happened in the culture about 20, 25 years ago, in which we somehow jettisoned experience. We stopped venerating age and experience, and all of those things that have guided us for millennia, right? And we started kind of putting youth on a pedestal, and it's almost like saying, right, you don't know anything, you've got no experience whatsoever, you are by definition shallow because you're young. Okay, we'll take a lead from you. That'll be great, won't it? And you see it with, you know, various cultural figures, and the obvious one that I'm thinking about, of course, is Greta Thunberg. Yeah. So it's that sense of, if we're kind of trying to think about where this stuff comes from, it's actually quite complicated because it brings in all of these other things. But the thing about youth is that they tend to be shallowly idealistic, and they tend to veer towards radical left-wing politics because they've not been kicked about by life yet. And so in a way, that's one explanation of how we're going left and left and left and left and left and left. I think it was Douglas Murray who said, or Jordan Peterson, I can't remember which one who said, you know, we can go left and left and left and left, but we never get to the gulag. Whereas, you know, you talk about mention reducing taxes once and you're a far right fascist and God knows what, you know. So there's a sense that things are at play which we're taking away the things that have guided us in the past. And in a way, I don't want to get too dark, but that's really frightening. And part of British culture is that Burkean thing of thinking about the contract between generations, the past, present, and future, and that idea of conserving something of the culture and conserving something of the way we do things. That stuff is being pushed away. We see it in the culture. We don't see the references to the past that we used to have. It's all new. The references are around the new religion of gender and race and sexuality. That's the whole thing. You know, it's the year zero mentality. Now that's fundamentally un-British, right? We've never done things like that. There have been elements of that in the culture, but they've never been dominant. Even in the 70s with the socialist experiment, there was still something really British about where we are. Now you can say, well, what's the reason for that? One of the obvious reasons for that is mass immigration. We had 1.2 million people coming to the country last year. Okay, that's going to change things massively, and that extremely quick, accelerated change is also part of what's going on. But we're not getting that sense of, hang on, let's just put the brakes on a little bit. It's more putting your head down and running towards the brick wall as quickly as you can. And for me, that's the frightening thing. That's what we see in culture, but that's what we're seeing in politics and society as well.